Welcome to the e-lounge, and thank you so much for joining us this afternoon. The e-lounge provides a platform for us to learn, to share knowledge, and to be inspired. This week, the world is commemorating the International Fraud Awareness Week, which started on the 13th and will end on the 19th of November 2022. And this year's theme is moral courage in the workplace. I am super excited today because we are going to hear one of these brave stories of courage and hope. It is Mosilo Mothepu's story in her book titled Uncaptured, the true account of the Nenegate, the Trillian whistleblower. I will now hand over to our host, the Chief Operating Officer, Mr. Tshepo Kobe.
The true test of courage is to be afraid and to go ahead, and to do it anyway. To be scared is to have your knees knocking, but walk on into there anyway. My guest today has shown true test of courage. My guest today is a name that most people don't really actually know. She's known probably by her, what do they call it? The name that everybody has given her, through from the papers to everybody else who have written about the story and everything else. But she's written a book about a painful time, and which is still a painful time in the brief history of our democratic country. And she's willing to come and share the story today. A banker by profession, and somebody who professes to love all beautiful things and enjoy beautiful trips like I do. We are here to share each other's experiences, and particularly so her experiences about what she's been through. Welcome, Mosilo. Mosilo Mothepu is our guest today. Welcome, ma'am, and welcome to share your story. Uncaptured, that's the name of the book.
Thank you very much. It's a pleasure to be here, and I'm honored to have accepted your invitation.
Let's start in the beginning, Mosilo. Who is Mosilo Mothepu?
Mosilo Mothepu wears many hats. She is the middle child of a Southern Sotho father and a Mosotho mom from Lesotho. We met in Roma, the National University of Lesotho. So I'm a product of parents that were educated. But unfortunately, being the middle child, I've always had to be the one who strives, the hard work. So I've always had to be extra in terms of my effort. I have a younger brother, so he's the only brother, and I'm not the firstborn. So I've always had to do extra things to shine out. My mom, I think, has always pushed on us to be educated. She's always pushed on us to work hard. But she's always said you need a balance in life. I have a degree in become accounting, and I did party hard. But I did get an upper second. And then I have a corporate finance honors from this, and there I think I went through a very spiritual side, so I spent all the time in the library just to, because nobody at Wits finishes in the time. But personally, I think I'm a lover of people. I'm a lover of entertaining. I love to cook. Once a month, if you've been invited to my table, you know that you are loved by me. I've always been career orientated, but not so much that I can say I was a workaholic. I work hard, but I enjoy the process of that. As you said, the finer things. I love traveling. I love hosting friends. I love the odd vanity projects that I have a collection of. But mostly, I think I'm stubborn and very independent. And when I make a decision, I don't ask the counsel, because at the end of the day, except my prayer, I'm a spiritual woman, and accept prayer and God's direction, then I'll make a decision, and thereafter, if there's good or bad consequences, then the people around me will know.
I want to get to this, and to me that was an incredible conversation. As I sat there, I thought, this is interesting. How do we have Mosilo's courage, conviction, and relentless? How do we find a way to bottle it and sell it? You know, that was the but I will get back to it. And to me, it's in that childhood, in that, you know, you speak a lot about your mother.
Yes.
And what in the manner in which that your mother has raised you and everything else actually brings in this? Not only the stubbornness, let's call it the resilience to, you know, to carry through issues and to look forward to being able to do the right thing. What do you remember the most in terms of your mother's raising that would actually be able to say, that is what my mother told me?
Goodness, it's a whole journey. Yes. My parents did get divorced when I was young, and so I was raised in Mosilo up until we were 8. And she was offered a post as a deputy ambassador in Brussels, Belgium, in 1986. So it was interesting because she was a single woman raising 3 children in a French-speaking country. So it's just seeing her work ethic, her resilience, and also the fact that she could have fun. You know, I get her hosting skills from her. And I think I've always wanted her to be proud. I think most people say I look most like her, and I think we even fight more because we're the same people. I think my character in Belgium, like I was the only black child in the whole year. So, but I never felt isolated. I was always included with all my colleagues, not my colleagues, my classmates. So I've always been able to integrate quite easily, learning French, learning German, but I think just seeing how hard my mom worked, but also her morality and her ethics. When I did something wrong,
you would know.
I would know.
Yes.
I would definitely know. And it's interesting, every single decision I've made in whether am I going to party or am I studying, every decision I've made, it's like, if this goes wrong, what am I going to tell her? Because I know she would be very disappointed. And so I think she plays a major part in my morality.
Do you believe that living abroad, or would you advise that, you know, a youngster has to go and live abroad for a period of time so that they can be able to have a sense of longing for Africa? You know? Your sense of conviction about, you know, doing the right thing, not only for, you know, for the country and all of that. Do you believe? Maybe I'm taking it from my own views, because when I think my sense of how I do things and why I needed to come back to the country after I had been living in England, doesn't that build something in you that says, but I need to go back home and do something and have an impact?
Absolutely. But also I forgot to say one other characteristic.
Yeah.
I'm a little bit militant.
A little bit is
yes. If you remember, in the 80s and 90s, we were starting to talk about the ozone layer.
Yes.
The greenhouse effect. And so I decided to be a vegetarian. and only buy stuff from the body shop because they were not tested on animals. And I was an activist of, stop the ozone layer because the rising sea level. For 7 years. So that was me at 9. So, and I was teased about it.
At 9?
Yeah, I was teased about it. I used to prescribe to WWF, and I saw the polar bears suffering because of the rising sea levels. So I've always had a conviction, and irrespective of how popular it was, that has been me. I had a PhD student from the University of Johannesburg, and he asked me, I need to understand about your childhood. Why did you stand up? And I said, I can't really say if there's one event that's happened. And then he says, I'm sure you didn't even steal stationery. At the time, I'm like, this pen is from MTN. So you can't even say I'm very different from my siblings. And I think my path was my path because God needed me to do what he ordained me to do. And I had no choice whatsoever. Plus, having lived in Maseru, I didn't really. We used to live next to Chris Honey in Hauhosho, and we used to have to sleep underneath the beds. And they would bomb. We would hear the sirens being bombed, and I think that's one of the most violent times of my life. And for me, having to come back and see what was happening in the country after our liberation, I felt that it was my duty, once again, to be militant and be the salmon that swims against the tide.
But, and it is important that we build this childhood because, a lot of this, this book, a lot of people can take it as being a story being told. But to me, it's a book about leadership. It's a book about, how to build conviction, how to build a sense of character, and a sense of character that is unwavering, irrespective of what they call it, what you do. But that does not just happen. Mosilo doesn't just show up one day and says, I'm going to do the right thing. It is something that is built into, what do they call it, into somebody, and somebody dare say it's baked into you at a very early age. And that is why I'm saying to you, the sense of not only living abroad, living abroad, the news of the environment and the ozone layer was so in your face at 8 years old, and by its sense you get to be clear about it. Greta Thunberg didn't just show up; she showed up because the country that she lives in is aware and promotes the issue of free speech. Now, obviously, you come back, you study, and you end up in the city of Johannesburg.
That's correct. Just a little bit of. We spent 7 years in Belgium.
Yes.
And we had to make English our mother tongue.
Okay.
And French secondary and German as well. So when I came back from Lesotho, I couldn't speak Sesotho. So I had to learn.
Okay.
So I was sort of not an outcast, but I was teased when I used to pronounce.
Okay.
And I went to Roma, and I went to private school, and the other students used to tease me a little bit. So I've never really been part of a popular sect.
Yeah.
And I decided that Lesotho was too small. I wanted to go Maboneng, Gauteng. And then I did my honors in corporate finance and investment in 2001 at Wits. I've always been a lover of infrastructure, but also giving back my education to public sector. So loving the city of Joburg, where we used to raise bonds alongside Jason Gobeni and Amos Masondo, dealing with doing road shows and going to Cape Town, trying to convince the investors, you know. We have a rating now from Fitch. We raise money from like the likes of Metropolitan, the PIC, and I think that's where future growth, all the large asset managers and the pension. And I think that's where my confidence started to grow, because I had to do the presentations, and alongside the treasurer, I was head of investor relations. But I think that's where my love of infrastructure finance started. But I will have to say, as a black woman, I did spend some time with 3 banks, and I always felt like I was a transformation checklist.
An agenda.
Yes. My first job, I had changed my hairstyle since the interview, and he passed me, and he couldn't recognize me, and he was not ready for me. So I spent the whole day, this is my audacity as well, reading Business Day, and he didn't introduce me to the team. I stood up and introduced myself to the team. So, because I felt that I have to be known. But when a person who is non-black, he was ready for them, laptop, and he introduced them to the team. So my time at corporate was a little bit bitter.
It was a bit rocky.
It was rocky, and you fight for meaningful work. And I felt very overqualified for what they had me doing. And I expressed my dissatisfaction, but I realized that maybe going to the city of Joburg was the first time where I had real infrastructure experience.
Before we go there, I mean, the experience you had with the banks and everything else, including the question when you asked, so how do I deal with my helper and most of other things? I mean, that is quite strange, as what do they call it? Would you say that sort of build up your conviction for a greater, for transformation and for change?
It did, because having been raised in Belgium, where there was no, I was judged by my characters. I had many friends who are from Malaysia, Holland, Belgium, England. So I would say the first time I realized that South Africa really was not integrated, and there were still segments. Even at the banks, you would have the Jew people, the rich Jews, and then you have the whites and the poor whites, and then you have the blacks and the Xhosas and the Zulus. So I felt I didn't know where I belonged in this pot. So I felt that they were dragging their feet, and very reluctantly.
I mean, that you even experienced when you first arrived at VETS, because at VETS in itself, it was already like that. It was already divided
it's
up.
interesting that it was very segregated, and my lecturer, when I put my hand up, he would look at the other students. And I said in my book, the first time I realized I was black is when I was at FITS, because before then I was treated with respect and with my intelligence and my expertise. And now South Africa showed me that even in 2001, we had a long way to go. And I even had to, after the lecture, go personally to the lecturer and ask questions that he didn't see my hand up.
Ignored you, let's put it properly.
Yes.
So aspiration to contribute, because that is a great part of your story. You call it militancy, but I see it as your aspiration to contribute. At that point in time, so where does the love for infrastructure come from? Let's start there first, before you say, well, I want to go and raise bonds to be able to build stuff for the city and everything else.
I love the financial markets.
Okay.
I love what it can do to South Africa. Remember we were on a drive, an infrastructure drive, and I wanted to be part of that. And I had, I initially wanted to be a chartered accountant, but I thought I had too much of a personality to count beans. No offense to CAs out there.
Oh,
so it was seeing what finance and expertise can transform a country. And if you remember, in those days, it was an infrastructure drive. The government was spending billions of rands on previously disadvantaged areas, roads, houses, electricity. And I felt that my expertise could assist the public sector to fulfill the lack of service delivery that we as Black people had. So that's where it comes from. Plus, I really enjoy the bond market, and I really enjoy raising debt, structured debt, negotiating, the road shows. It's not a job where you sit and you're on your desk the whole day. I mean, you deal with rating agencies, you deal with the asset managers, the banks, you negotiate. Due diligences, you know, you fly once in a while to a nice, interesting country like I went to Bangladesh and India for a microfinance institution case study. So I think I find it sexy.
Yeah.
Yes. It excites me.
You lived in the days of the study tours.
Yes.
The days of the study tours. Now, you work with the city and things are going well. Jason is there, and then Jason moves on.
Yes.
Now, the new person, you know, for whatever reason, doesn't like this. You know, this youngster that seems to know everything here.
Yes, it's always a strange dynamic where you have peers and then one is promoted. And then they need to reaffirm their new power.
Yes.
So so he gave me unrealistic goals just to set me up for failure. He wanted me to report somewhere else because he just did not want me anywhere near him. So he was a driving force for me to leave and go to Regiments Capital.
Before you go to Regiments Capital, I've got somebody probably sitting out there listening to us and going, okay, Mosilo, I'm good at what I do. Does that mean because I'm good at what I do and I might offend my superiors, should I be hiding my capabilities and all of that? Because sometimes when that happens, it happens because the person who you report to can see you as a threat as such. What advice would you give to somebody out there who's looking at you right now and saying, man, forget about this state capture stuff. This lady has been fighting the good fight for years before. And how do you balance the two?
I always think of myself when I'm 90.
Yes.
And look back at my life.
That's what I thought I always have.
Yes.
The one when I'm 90.
Yes.
Okay.
And I said to myself, I will never be mediocre.
Okay.
Mediocrity is something I will never do. So whatever task he gave me unrealistic timelines. I would stay up all night and do it, so that he had no reason whatsoever to question my ability. I mean, but I tried to, through my performance, you know, get him to at least have a professional relationship with me.
Acknowledge you.
Acknowledge me. Thank you. You did it in a short time. Or being micromanaged. I'm head of investor relations. I take people out for lunch, and if we finish at 3, I'm going home. So he wants me back in the office. That was not my culture, because I have to liaise with different stakeholders when we raise money for the city. So it's very hard to balance, because you have this person who's slightly insecure, but you want to do your best.
Stick to your personal goals.
Yes.
That's what you're saying.
Yes,
But somebody's sitting out there and says, but Mosilo, the world is run by average people. Why should I be making an extra effort?
Well, if you want to live your life in mediocrity,
Yes.
then that's for you and your 90-year-old self to have. I don't believe in reincarnation. I believe in one life. And you know, everything I do, I even when I go on a diet,
We'll talk about that a little bit later.
I will weigh myself. I will know how many calories. I'll go spinning. I just like do things. When I do things, I do it well. And even in January, I always go. It's dry January. I just don't go out. I just have water and vegetables for the whole month. And to spin off and sweat off
the December
the
week.
December excess.
Yes.
And if it means my friend saying, no, let's go out. And I said, no, I know I'm going to eat red meat and I'm going to have a glass of wine. I'll see you in February.
Okay.
Yeah.
Your aspirations lead you in the direction when you're saying, well, I've always wanted to be in a world-class city. I worked in the world-class city, but it might seem like the world-class city does not want me anymore.
Yes.
But I still have the aspiration to be able to work with black-owned firms, that advisory firms.
Yes.
At that point in time, the two guys are there in the city of Johannesburg as offices, I can literally see them. I mean, we used to do some work with them before all this mess, but I can literally see
swag.
them. Yes.
As if they own.
As if they own the city.
Yes.
And so at that point in time, you decide, I'm going to join Regiment.
I think in my book, I said he caused me so much stress, I started having neck spasms.
Yes.
And I had to have a neck brace. So I was on sick leave. So one of the regiment's executive directors called me, and he says, do I want to join them? I said, yeah, actually, we've just been given an advisory mandate from Airports Company, South Africa, to assist them in raising funding for the refurbishment and the new build of airports in preparation for
the World Cup.
The World Cup. Plus, the Regiments Capital Asset Management were managing the city's sinking fund. So every quarter they would be there to submit the returns. The sinking fund is, a bond. Let's say it's R1 billion over 10 years. You just you only pay the interest, and then at the end you pay the billion. So a sinking fund, you make quarterly or monthly or annual contributions. A fund manager invests in it so that by the end of year 10, there's R1 billion for you to pay off the bond. So that's what they did. So I met, and they were fun. They used to invite us to parties, and they used to host golf days. So I knew them well. So we had a few conversations, and I decided, it's my time to leave, and me funding the biggest, it was Africa's first time to host the Soccer World Cup, and it sounded very interesting to me.
The love for infrastructure continues.
Absolutely, absolutely.
And one of the things that, what do they call it, and at some point in time I said, we have to talk about the spreadsheet, but not yet.
There are many spreadsheets.
There's many spreadsheets I know.
Yes.
Right, there's many spreadsheets I know. The one for managing the bond, the one for managing the bags, the one for entertaining and everything else. Your personal goals and commitment. And at the point when everything is going on, how does one balance personal goals and commitments and the spreadsheet and being able to say, look, my values do not allow me to do the following?
At that time,
Yes.
this was Regiments 1.0.
Yes.
I was a executive, I was a junior executive director.
Yeah.
So I was not on the board and I was not at Exco.
Yeah.
I was there for 3 years. Wonderful bonuses. I mean, I had a 250,000 Rand sign-on bonus, which I paid off my car, used that debit order to pay off my bond in 5 years. And I worked hard with Eric. We worked with Priscilla Mabelane. We worked with Nhlanhla at AXA. We worked with Petulo Ramusibudi at the Treasurer. So I've always been, I work hard, but I reward myself. So I went to Ibiza with my friends. I went to Mykonos. We went to Santorini. We traveled. We partied. But I always made sure that my financial goals were always met. Sometimes I would borrow from myself because I was a little bit extravagant. I also give, by the way, to my family who are less fortunate. So at that time, there were no red flags at regiments, and I had left after 3 years because I wanted to. Their relationships were with public sector. So the AXA, we were successful. We raised 5.5 billion Rand for them. We assisted them in the short-term facilities of 10 billion. I always say in my book, when you go through the central terminal building at OR Tambo, think of Mosilo Mothepu. She convinced Agence Française Development, AFD, which is a French DFI, to lend AXA 85 million euros. And they wanted an asset that they can point to the government, and that's the central terminal building. So I negotiated that. Even the DBSA, when we met, they said, why do we as a development finance institution want to fund rich people to fly around the world? So I had to convince them, no, this is an economic development. We need first world airports because we're about to host first world soccer for the first time. The whole world will be looking at South Africa, and the first step will be looking at how our airports were. So it was successful, and I was proud.
At the point when you were at Regiments the first time, work was being built that was done.
Absolutely.
It was a normal business that ran, well, from where you said it ran the normal way. You could be able to point out, I did that work, we were paid that amount of money with that contract that what do they call it? And I'm also intrigued by your sense of the PFMA, maybe probably spending that much time in the city, you also understood that there is no way that things can be paid for that there was no contract for. But at that point in time, with Regiments 1, work was being done, and what do they call it?
Yes, and the fees were paid. I remember one instance where we were closing out with AXA. And I led the transactions. Even if you go look at AXA's balance sheet now, I'm sure those loans are still there. And I had to drive to the Bedford View office and collect an 18 million Rand check.
Why were they paying you with a check? That's a question I had. I thought, I mean, that's like in 2010. Why were they? I mean, EFTs were already in place at that point in time.
I should have actually asked myself.
Yes.
So there I am driving my little A3, which I still have today.
Yes.
And I'm thinking, I should not get hijacked. That is the most money I've ever... Yeah, so there were no red flags. I left because I wanted private sector experience, plus the deal flow was drying up. So they couldn't get into Transnet, they couldn't get into Eskom, and AXA had completed the airports. So the only theory generating project was the sinking fund.
Yes.
And I was bored. So, and my relationship with Eric had deteriorated.
The first time.
The first time.
Yes.
Yes. Yeah. He replaced me without telling me on a project because the city was not forthcoming with information because they were going through an audit. So they said, you're not number one. So he thought of that as incompetency, said I dropped the ball, and he replaced me with somebody else without telling me. So this, you imagine you wake up in the morning, you are the subordinate instead of the lead of the transaction, and he doesn't even have the courtesy to tell you. So I thought, no, this character. But I have to say, his character was sort of like a red flag. I remember we raised a billion rand for the city, but he didn't want to tell the city that there's a 30 basis points commitment fee.
Okay.
Surely when there's a term sheet. And so he says, no, just keep quiet about it. And I said, no, but they have to know that they have to pay. So the CFO sees it on the loan agreement, and we're called to the city.
Someone to the...
Yes, and she's just looking down like this, and he was like such a coward. And I realized, why would you hide something significant like this? And when I raised it, you tell me to keep quiet. So I was quiet as well, because it was not my
it wasn't your circus.
It was not my circus. So he had to explain it away, and so I think I started seeing sort of unethical behavior from him. Yeah.
At that point in time, you know, and we have to have that conversation, because a lot of youngsters, and you know, the beauty with the show is that it goes onto YouTube, and then a lot of youngsters watch over and over again. A lot of youngsters look at certain things and they go, no, to save my career, I'm not going to touch these things, or even question them with their own managers. I mean, yes, when you're in a, what do they call it, in the presence of the client, whoever's leading, they must lead. You're not supposed to be the one that, but a lot of youngsters are sitting out there and saying, but Mosilo, how do I do it? How do I, you know, am I able to just say to somebody, but this doesn't look right? But somehow, a lot of youngsters, like you did back then, always push the red flags away. At a late, with hindsight, how would you be able to advise somebody to be able to say, look, once you start seeing these things, be aware of them. I'm not saying leave immediately, but be aware of them. How would you, what would be the best advice? Because a lot of people, you say, there's a bond, there's an A3 to be paid, there's this and that and everything else, and you just say, nah, what do they call it? It's his problem. I have my own convictions.
No, it's your own conscience that has to lead you at the end of the day.
Yes.
I saw a characteristic that I had never seen before from him. But I think subsequent to that, I did leave. I was disappointed in him, and I think on the way home, on the way back to the office, said no, we should not have done that in the first place, and I think this is a learning lesson for us. And he agreed. Assets come and go. Your reputation, your conscience, they're yours. You have a name, and if you decide that you are going to be pulled in certain direction to preserve a certain lifestyle, then it's your conscience to deal with that. But there's no, in my life, there's no gray area, and I think everybody has that. And if there's black or white, there's right or wrong. There's nothing in the middle. It's up to you whether you're going to speak out or just whisper in the corridor and do nothing because you don't want to rock the boat. So it depends who your God is. Is it your conscience or is it your car outside that pulls you into making a decision? Because we all worship something.
I bet you most people will tell you it's a BMW parked outside.
Exactly, exactly.
But, you know, and it is an important conversation. As I said to you, this book, a lot of people can see it in and around the story of what do they call it. But there is a lot of leadership lessons in the book itself. And I, you know, even I hope it gets classified properly in the bookstores, because it's about leadership and being able to, you know, to have the courage and conviction of doing that. You then leave regiments to
the private sector.
To the private sector. And when you get there, you know, what pulls you back again?
Nothing had changed.
Okay, all right.
Since
so the second time,
for the second
the hairstyle has changed and nobody can recognize you.
And I had a midlife crisis.
Okay.
At, I think, 30-something.
Yes.
So I went to Wits and did my MCOM.
Yes.
Full-time.
Full-time?
Yes. And
was that on the spreadsheet?
I knew how much I had. I knew how much I could afford to live on every. But then it went down very quickly.
Okay.
And then I was now an associate director at KPMG.
Okay.
And I think KPMG this was now November 2014. It was just worse. My juniors had significant work.
Yeah.
I was ignored. I was in infrastructure and mega projects. Yes. I'll be maybe just respond to this tender, but active projects, my juniors were getting the work. So at that time, I'm frustrated. I'm even thinking of being a housewife. My partner was an ambassador in Zimbabwe. And I get a call from Eric in May. And he says, hi, because remember, our relationship had deteriorated. Yes. So he's very charming. He says, no, let's have coffee. Okay. So we have coffee, and he says, so I left regiments in December 2010. So now it's 2015 May. So it's been 5 years. He says, we've grown. We are no longer the company we used to be. When you left, we were 50, now we're 250. We work with McKinsey, one of the best consultancy in the world. We've got contracts with Transnet, SAA, we're doing structuring works, SA Express, Nene. We're negotiating a contract with Eskom, where we want somebody with your leadership style to manage that team. And he says, can we afford you? This is Eric Wood. Yes. Aston Martin driving. Yeah. Went, Top Gear comes, they borrow his car, his fleet of cars. Okay. And they give him a Rolls Royce. Okay. So at the time, I was earning, I think, 1,300,000 rands. Yeah. Yes. So I said, I want 2. He said, no, that's too expensive. I said, okay. He says, well, I can give you 1,750,000 and at $500,000 rand sign-on bonus. And I'm thinking, well, that's actually more than I wanted. Yes. So I resign. And I get my sign-on bonus, and I am his blue-eyed wonder. He takes me everywhere. And I'm exposed to the chair people. I mean, I remember my first meeting with the chairman of SA Express, which I was it was very weird, because I don't understand why a chairperson will involve himself in procurement issues. So, red flag number 1. But I felt I was in the presence of greatness, a whole chairperson. Yes. And he would take me everywhere to meet with Anur Singh at Transnet. He was preparing his way to Eskom. We were given the mandate to raise a club loan because Transnet had a 350 billion rand capital investment program called the Market Demand Strategy.
Yeah, the MDS.
Yes. So
that we all worked on.
Yes. So before my time, they had raised $2.5 billion from the Chinese Development Bank.
Okay.
But it was, it required a cross-currency swap. So to the listeners or viewers, the loan was to be paid back in dollars.
Okay.
And it was 15 years. But the problem with Transnet is the revenue's in rands.
Yes.
So you have to now buy dollars
Yes.
for the 15 years.
You had to hedge.
Yes, you have to hedge it.
Yes.
And it increases the cost of funding.
Yes.
So they only drew $1.5 billion.
Okay.
And they didn't draw the other billion. So the club loan came and said, no, let's blend the sources of funding. So once again, I'm leading that transaction. We raised 12 billion rand with the likes of Old Mutual, Nedbank, Absa, China, was it another subsidiary? Yeah, so he took me everywhere. We were liaising with Eskom on the contract. So what was supposed to happen? The original agreement was Regiments is Mackenzie's subcontractor.
Yeah.
And then Mackenzie is the main contractor for Eskom. Mackenzie had already done a due diligence on Regiments because they were doing work at Transnet already. They assisted them in the market demand strategy. They assisted them in the raising of the 2.5 billion and the financial model. That went from 34 billion to 55 billion. So they were working alongside Mackenzie as their skills development partner. So they wanted to duplicate this model at Eskom.
Yes.
Now there was a problem. The parents started fighting.
Okay.
So and every time there were arguments, Eric would say, no, I'm selling my shares, I'm leaving, right? But now when I look back, Nevin Pillay told me a story that on a Saturday, Eric called him and Lita. Lita was his chairman, Nevin Pillay was an executive director, and Eric was also an executive director. He says, no, meet me at, I think, a hotel. And he says, no, get into my car. And he got into his car, and then they went to Saxon World.
Yeah. Okay.
Yes, the Shebeen. Yes, they went to the Shebeen, and the Guptas made them an offer and said, "I can make you a $1 billionaire. Sell us your company." What was? I asked Eric, by the way, how did you now grow from 20 million a year to 800 million a year and have all these, I would say, the blue chip state-owned companies that he was struggling 5 years ago? He says, we have a new model. We have these guys called business development partners.
Okay.
They opened the taps, the political taps,
the
doors. And Kuben Mudli and Salim Issa. And whatever contract we get through their relationship, they get a certain percentage of the fee. So at the time, it didn't bring any red flags. I mean, at KPMG, it was that model, not that KPMG is a model corporate citizen. So, but the three of them deliberated, and they said no. But I saw Eric's behavior, throwing his toys. It's like he wanted to divorce, and that's what they decided. So he decided, guys, I'm leaving. This relationship has come to an end.
Yes.
I'm buying advisory from you.
Yes.
I'm forming a company with Salim Issa.
Yes.
We will pay you the value, and I'm starting Trillian. So this happened.
Before we get there, Mosilo, and then we will get to Trillian.
Yes.
That's when the book gets interesting. You see, as I said to you, to me, my insight that I'm drawing from the book is that through it all, I mean, you remain steadfast and you always had your brain on properly. Yes, there are a few red flags that you ignored and all of that. But here's my question, probably somebody out there who's watching us and talking about this. There's sometimes when you get punch drunk with all these fancy meetings. You know, you went to meet the chairman of that board and, you know, you're getting dragged in all of these meetings. And I've got a youngster out there who's probably thinking, but isn't that a good thing? And shouldn't I be, you know, aspiring to raise my profile to be well connected? Because there's this thing about being well connected that I learned when I used to be in consulting. It's not normally the best things on your side, but it's how do you advise a youngster and who you're mentoring to say to him, look, it's not about being well connected. It's about knowing when a meeting doesn't look right. You know, what advice would you give to a youngster about that? Before we get to the Trillian bit, I mean, from when you got back there and Eric was taking you everywhere, that sort of a thing could intoxicate somebody to the level where their sense of, what do they call it, of self almost disappears.
I think for anybody in business, relationships are key. So I was not there when all the, like the Transnet contract, the SAA contract, I wasn't there when they were procured. So I had no vision of how they were procured. But I was happy to be a transactor and leading a team and hiring new people. And this was a time where work was being done at Transnet.
Yes.
We did raise 400 million rand for SA Express. And I was just a principal. I had no power to tell the FD to generate an invoice. Now, but I think because you're naive and you're excited and you feel special that I am. It's always me and Eric.
Yes, you're
going
all
to
in these,
yes, going to meetings
in the Aston Martin.
In the Aston Martin, yes. And you know, it's quite interesting that people used to think you know, when you were at the robots, I would get terrible looks from black men thinking, oh, you've sold off it. You've gone to the other side. And then also the white females will be thinking,
Okay. Okay.
So I got very dirty looks. So I would say, just double check.
Okay.
I read a book by, I forget the name, I think his last name is Gladwell.
Yeah, Malcolm Gladwell.
Yes.
Yes. Which one, the tipping point or the...
I hope
but it's fine, yes.
Yes, about how you give somebody the benefit of the doubt until you're proven otherwise.
That's blink, yes.
Yes, so you trust your doctor.
Yes.
But then they say, no, and I've been going to this doctor for 10 years. And then they say, no, he faked his qualifications. I don't believe it.
Yes.
I don't believe it. Absolutely not. Not him.
Yes.
So I think you have not a cult personality, but you have a bias towards it's a mistake.
Okay.
It's a misjudgment. Yeah. This is just one of those. He lacks judgment, and it's not it's not something in a greater scheme. But it's It's a red
flag is a red flag. And then going back to Malcolm calls it fundamental attribution error.
Yes.
Because all of us tend to think something big has to happen.
Exactly.
For me to see that, or to move a relationship forward, or to see that this is wrong.
Yes.
Whereas it's the small things. And what you're simply saying is that look out for the small things. The small things are the ones that are going to, what do they call it, to catch you out. And those small red flags.
Yes.
Now, here you are meeting everybody and,
I'm transacting.
You're transacting and everything else.
Yes.
And then the Trillian split, or what do they call it? The regiment split is looming.
Yes.
And one of the directors says to you, you have to be careful with Eric. He lacks judgment. He
lacks sound judgment.
Yes, at times.
We were in Copenhagen.
Yes. Right by the Harbor Day.
Enjoying Chinese food, because we no offense to the Danish, but very bland food.
I've been to beautiful restaurants in Copenhagen. Yes.
I was there last month. So yeah.
Next time you go there, just let me know. I will refer you.
Yes. So he says, no, be careful with Eric. He lacks sound judgment. By that time, it was like a CR-17 camp and NDZ camp.
Yes.
You were either going with Eric or you're staying with Niven and Nita.
Yes.
And by that time, Eric says, you are going to be the CEO.
Ooh, that's interesting.
Yes, you're going to be the CEO of Trillian Financial Advisory. You're moving with your team, and we're going to take over these contracts.
Yes.
So Niven at the time, we were very close at Regiments 1.0, but he saw that I was Eric's person, so he didn't really pay me that much attention. He had his own camp that stayed. So lacking sound judgment, I did recall, yes, I recall he didn't mention a fee, but okay. Until today, I'm like, Niven, is that all you could have said?
I love the way you've written it in the book. You've written it exactly like that. Like, is that all you could have said? He makes sound judgment.
Yes. Huh? Yes. So I had no privy to the invoicing. Yeah. All I know that my time at Regiments from June up until March, all the work that I worked on was invoiced properly. Now, we talk about our morning coffee. And this also should have been a red flag. So I used to be an early bird. So you wake up and get to the office at around 7:30. Eric was always there, so we'd have coffee, and I will talk about, his wife overspending. She crashed the helicopter, Yeah,
that kind of
that kind of thing. There's a bespoke tailor from London. Look, he quoted me 1.2 million for 2 suits. I'm like, Eric. And then he's like, Mosilo, when are you going to buy a new car? I said, Eric, just leave me alone. And I think God knew that, you're not staying here long. He says, the president is going to fire Nhlanhla.
Just like that?
Just like that.
Over coffee?
Over coffee. And I said, huh? He says, yes. He's going to replace him with a more pliable minister. And because Nene refuses to sign the nuclear deal and the SAA new aircraft. Yes. And Mohammed Bobad, your colleague, is going to be the advisor of the minister. Oh, I have to say, I was not a political animal.
Yes.
I subscribed to the Financial Mail and the Business Day. I only knew who the Reserve Bank governor was and who the finance minister was. And I didn't understand the executive ethics code. That the fact that an outside party
could be able to
a financial services boutique has prior knowledge of the president firing a minister over something that is ethical, in his words, Nene, and then the fact that they choose who is special advisor is, and this special advisor is going to give us information at Trillian so that we get all the work. Second red flag. This time now I'm stuck.
Yes.
It happens. So this is October.
Yes.
And I have to say, on that Saturday, the 23rd of October, that was when Mcebisi Jonas was made the offer.
The big, the 600
The 600 million and the 600,000 rand in the bag.
In the bag, yeah.
On that Monday, where he told Nene, it was the same Monday that Eric told me about the firing of the minister. So somebody must have said yes over the weekend. So it happens, and I'm now stuck. But I go to the office, and Nenegate, and I said, wow, you were right. He said, yes, I told you. And he says, no, I'm not going to be here today. I'm going to meet the new minister. That Friday was the last Christmas party. Yeah. And the chairman, Lita Nyonya, was late because he says, guys, I'm so sorry. I had golf with the comrades because this cabinet reshuffle, actually, no, it was not a cabinet reshuffle. Okay. The firing of the minister made no sense. Yes. And in my mind, I'm thinking, I've known this for 6 weeks, and your partner is meeting with the minister alongside the advisor. And I'm now outpriced in the market.
Yeah. So at that point in time, already you were getting ends in your pants and thinking,
yes,
no, I need to
go.
Get out of here. This is dangerous.
Yes,
now.
This is dangerous.
Yes.
So I'm now looking for a job. Yes. But we move on but when I naively thought that on that Sunday, when Pravin Gordhan was replaced, that this plan of theirs
has been foiled.
Yeah, it's a stillborn. Yeah. So it's business as usual. So we move on the 1st of March, and I'm signed my directorship. I'm a CEO. My salary goes from 1,750,000 rand to 2,300,000. Yeah. Yes. Remember, I just got my sign-on bonus. Yeah. Then I get an 800,000 rand performance bonus. Yeah. So I'm outpriced.
Yes.
Me and the CFO were close, and we said, you know what, something just doesn't feel right. Yeah, something doesn't feel right. And I saw a Mail and Guardian, I think it was the 31st of, no, sometime in March. It was after Waterkloof. Yes. So we knew that the president had an unhealthy relationship with the 3 Gupta brothers. So that was known, and there was a sort of a chart, as in which minister is a Gupta brother, how are they linked to different entities, yes. And I could see, I could add more.
Yes, or you could actually fill in the missing.
No, you're actually wrong.
Fill in the missing bits, yes.
Nenegate is Muhammad, and it's Trillian. Yes. And Mark Pominski, who was a board member. Yes. At Eskom. Yeah. He was supposed to be the CEO of Trillian Property. Yeah. And Stan Shane established Trillian, and he got a fee from Trillian. Yeah. But he served on the board of Transnet, my partner was in town, and I said, I am part of this. Yeah. I need to leave right now. 16th of March, my birthday. He says, yes, you're right. So now my relationship with Eric has deteriorated. Yes. Because he had given me an unlawful instruction. Yes. He asked me to ask my team to do an unsolicited bid to Transnet Engineering. Yes. On the 16th of February. And then on the 22nd of February, he asked me to ask finance to invoice 11.4 million rand, and I refused.
So at that point in time, now suddenly you are refusing to, what do they call it, to issue the invoice, and Eric is not happy.
No, right now, he said, we were supposed to move formally in March. This was now February. But he says, he used Trillian's letterhead. And I said, okay, I think maybe you've decided something with your partner that you will...
You will take that business.
Yes. And I refused. I went to Mossel Bay. It was a stressful time. Come back, and I see that my junior, Eric went against my back and asked my junior to ask finance, and the finance had
issued the invoice.
Yes, had issued the invoice. And then on my birthday, I'm told that the president wants to fire Pravin. This is after Nenegate, yes, he's not signing.
Yeah.
This time, I'm not sleeping. Insomnia, I'm thinking my depression was setting in. I questioned my judgment. I should not have come here. And my relationship with Eric had completely deteriorated.
Yes.
I felt undermined as a black woman. I was there by name only.
Yes.
He had these advisors, Clive, Mark, and Stan, and they were running the show. Me, Bianca Goodson, who was the CEO of the management consulting arm, we were just black women.
Yes.
So it was fronting. But we had the directorship risk.
You, the one that had signed at CIPC,
yes,
that sits there as being you.
Yes. Yes. And these guys are just his advisors.
Yeah.
So I write him a letter expressing my concerns. And then what was supposed to happen was on the 1st of March, the assets were supposed to be transferred to Trillian, and then cede the contracts so that the clients can approve. So that didn't happen. So I'm already thinking, we're operating illegally here. So I make sure that it's minuted. Negotiations are taking forever. Then we got hold that because now Regiments was no longer going to work with McKinsey at Eskom. So they had to do a due diligence, a credit risk review in the US.
Yes.
And Trillian was rejected by McKinsey's credit risk review because we had no track record, and Salim Issa was a 60% shareholder, so he was a politically exposed person.
Yes.
So they declined that partnership. And so we go to Eskom. Anuj Singh, now he's been appointed the CFO alongside him and Brian. And Eric doesn't come to the meeting because apparently they had that conversation the previous evening. So Anuj says, no, there's no contract, so the meeting stops. So we go back to the office. And I said, Eric, but why did you allow us to drive to Megawatt Park if you already knew that there was no relationship? And then he says, no, don't worry. Because we were working on risk, on anticipating that there will be a contract. Yes. And I said, well, I have to withdraw my team. He says, no, me and Anuj will figure something out. And I remember...
Him and Anuj will figure something out.
Me and Anuj Singh will figure something out. And I said, okay, when I go to Thuli Madonsela, and then I'm continuing with Eskom, how am I going to say, we'll figure something out? I don't know which part, which act. Something out. I don't know what section that act is. And it's quite strange that I actually thought Thuli Madonsela. So when I wrote him a letter, and then he suspended me. And Eric, so I had a meeting with Tebo, Leballo, the FD, and he said all negotiations between the partners have been suspended, terminated. So I realized everything I've done has been illegal. And I resigned.
You resigned right there.
I spent, I think I slept at 4 a.m. reading the Companies Act and the fiduciary responsibilities.
Yeah.
I resigned. For the first time, I felt a weight lifted, but I felt betrayed. Now, I could see who Eric was. It was a racketeering money laundering enterprise.
Yes.
And what was strange is that even though the CFOs and the board and the executives of these companies, they knew that the sessions had not been signed.
Yes.
But they decided now to leave regiments behind and work with Trillian, with no contracts and no work done.
Yes. But you know what, while we're at it and having this conversation, I mean, there's a youngster out there, and we all live on hope. We all live on the aspiration, you know, that 1994 brought, where black advisory firms will be built, and you know the economic emancipation that we were looking forward to is going to come. Now, as we live through that hope, most of the time or half of the time, we ignore these things because there's more hope than anything else. And anyway, who am I to question somebody who has, you know, a fleet of cars, or what do they call it, of supercars? He gets suits made by a tailor from London, kind of a thing. And, you know, his wife spends so much money all over the place.
Crashing helicopters.
You understand? So, you know, if we were to give advice, and give advice on the basis of, yes, you get there and you realize this is not really going the right way. But the question is, and we sit there and say, okay, if one was to give advice in hindsight, and in hindsight is you look back and you go, okay, I could have seen that, and I could have listened to that advice, in as much as it wasn't very explicit. It just said he's got poor judgment and all of that. How does one balance out the idea of the hope and the aspiration that a lot of youngsters have, be it black, white, or whatever, and the need to be careful and be cautious in whatever transactions they get involved in. How do we balance that, Mosilo?
I think let me just say who I was then.
Yes.
I was flying on top of the world.
Yes.
Okay. I was 3 months into 3 debit orders into paying off my bond.
Yes.
My partner and I had we were going to purchase a nice 6.5 million rand house together.
Yeah.
I know this because of the spreadsheets. The Audi, I paid it off a long time ago, and I was eyeing the Range Rover Sport.
Yes.
And
life was good.
Life was good.
Yes.
I was traveling with my partner. We were going to all sorts of places. I was, you know, buying my favorite designer bags,
yes,
which I saved up for. Always had to see where the euro was. Make adjustments,
yes,
but I used to get one a year, and then of course you get the VAT back at the airport, and then you spend that VAT,
okay,
but you never come back with change.
Yes.
So, and then of course don't forget, I am highly paid, and every time I see this, they were like, no, I'm saying I will take anything, yes, lower than this. But at that time, Regiments and Trillian had that bad reputation.
Yes.
I just decided that my soul and those material things that I had and aspired to have were not worth me continuing. So somebody said you could have fought from the inside. It soon dawned on me that this was part of a economic treasonous grand-scale corruption that was involved in the looting of state-owned companies. Most of that money that Trillian got went towards selling ISA, and he had some front companies that were owned by the Guptas. So, you know, in normal organizations, you know, you have a whistleblower hotline, you can confide with maybe somebody, and then you can have that.
You can work through that.
You can work through that, and you can say, no, I'm going to fight from within. And I'm protected by the PDA and my conscience, right? PDA is a Protected Disclosure Act that says if you blow the whistle, you can't suffer occupational detriment. I'm sounding like a lawyer now. So they can't fire you, suspend you because of your whistleblowing. I would say imagine, I mean, one day those BMWs. There's one every year. Every year.
They're making.
Yes, your conscience and your good name is more important than all the riches in the world.
Yeah.
And it's your moral compass. What drives you? I had to leave because I had no place there. But if somebody sees wrongdoing in an organization and there are structures and there's culture to report a safe place, I would say, you know, go for it.
Let it be reported.
Let it be, and your conscience will be clear. You will suffer because sometimes, I mean, most companies ignore the PDA, they fire you anyway, and then you have to fight from outside. But I don't think any Aston Martin or 600 million is worth. I mean, Des van Rooyen right now, I don't think anybody will ever touch him with a stick because we know that he sold the country. But it was only for one weekend, thank God.
Now, with us having that and the conscience and all of that, then ultimately after Mossel Bay and all of that, you make it out to Egypt on the Red Sea.
I resigned at that time.
You have resigned at that point in time?
Yes, and I've gone to a lawyer.
Okay.
A corporate lawyer.
Yes.
And I unburdened myself.
Yes.
What happened, what I saw. And he says, well, you were a director and you have an obligation. You either go to the police. I said, no, but they're captured.
Yes.
You report to a minister. I said, I don't know which one is a Gupta minister. Yeah. Or you go to the PP. And I said, but what if they kill me? Yeah. Because this was the height of Zuma's influence.
That was a complicated time to live in. That was a very complicated time to live in.
Nkabisi had already
spoken out
and had a conference, a press conference saying, I was offered this much to be the finance minister. Fikile Mbalula had already said, it was already leaked in the NEC that the new age already had, he was congratulated that he was going to be the minister of something, even before the president had informed him. Yes. And I think there was another one where the new age had put that Brian Molefe will be the new CEO of Transnet, even before it was announced publicly. So we could see the influence of the Guptas that time. So I said, what if they kill me? So I went to Egypt. My partner now had left Zimbabwe. And I went there a coward. Yeah, I went there a coward. But I have to say, people are like, how was your mental state? It was terrible. It was terrible. I couldn't sleep. I felt depressed, crying all the time. I felt betrayed by my mentor. I felt used and abused. And I couldn't believe it. So I went there for 3 months to just soothe. He was going to a conference in Sharm el-Sheikh, and I accompanied him. Now I'm a Christian. So we go there. He's an atheist, by the way. Yes. Yeah, he's like, how can an educated woman like you be a Christian? Yes. So we go to Sharm el-Sheikh. It's a peninsula, beautiful place, and we go on a tour before the conference starts. So we go to the wilderness. Yes. And now my mind is in the Old Testament,
Yes.
where God was, where he spoke.
Yes.
And I said, wow, this is where the children of Israel
That were lost for 40
years.
Yes. It's a small place, yeah?
Yes, it's a very, yes. And they were just
GPS
going
would have
around.
helped there.
Yes.
Yeah.
And then we went to the plaque where Moses got the Ten Commandments.
Yes.
And there's this plant,
Yes.
it's called the descendant of the burning bush.
Okay.
That's the Holy of Holies, the only place where God has touched the earth. And then it's they built a St. Catherine there.
Yeah.
Yeah, I didn't ask. So my partner's like fairy tales. So I let him just.
Yes.
So I look at this burning bush and I'm moved, almost to tears. And then we go back to the hotel. It's now sunset. I'm having South African Chardonnay.
Yes.
I'm very, very, very
We haven't got into the wine. We need to get to the wine.
Yes. So I'm watching this beautiful sunset, enjoying Chardonnay, and then I check Wi-Fi, and then I see that Thuli's office is. It was the first time I actually read her terms of reference.
Yeah.
And I realized I can help you with this and this and this and this and this.
Yes.
And then I saw that the hawks were circling around Pravin Gordhan
Yes.
for charges. And I said, no, it's because the president wanted to. This was now September 2016.
Yes.
And then I asked the waiter, what sea is this? He says, no, this is the Red Sea, ma'am. But I said, no, but it's blue. My disappointment. But then I say, I serve a God that parted the Red Sea. I would say that's when I got my Red Sea conviction. Me and God had a conversation.
Yes.
And I said, I have to go back. What if they kill me? But I said, but what side of history do I want to be on?
Do you want to belong to?
Yes. Am I going to? You made a statement about the absence of fear. I had all the fear in the world, and you know, there's a saying that I think it's an Irish philosopher. I say his name. The only thing necessary for evil to triumph is for good men to do nothing. In my case, a good woman. And I said,
It's in the poem, The Reckoning.
Yes.
Yes.
Am I a good woman?
Yes.
So my mother now came in.
I think it's W.B. Yeats.
Yes. What is more dignified for her?
Yes.
For me to go and disclose this corruption, and I'm assassinated, and then she lays a wreath, dignified, that I fought for a good cause.
For a good cause.
Oh, I'm a coward.
Who ran to Egypt?
Who ran, and then I am preca. I'm in jail.
Yes.
And she comes with tampons and contraband.
Yes.
That contraband will be a bottle of wine.
Yes.
So I said, a wreath, what's more dignified, a wreath or tampons? For my mother.
Yes.
And I said the wreath was more dignified. The following day, went back to Cairo, wrote my statement, and my partner, having been working in the government, made an appointment for me to meet Thuli Madonsela and Pravin Gordhan. So I had my Red Sea moment, like Paul had his
Yes, you had your Damascus moment.
Yes.
Interestingly enough, you know, what do they call it? The tongue-in-cheek story is that Moses was the first person to download instructions from the cloud, you know. On a tablet.
Exactly, on a tablet, yes.
But having been to a place where Moses was the first person to download instructions from the cloud, you come back. Is there at any point in time, and I want to get to the point where we talk about the relationships, you know, the bits that happen after that. And one day I'll get a chance to take a selfie with Thuli Madonsela, but only you would do that. In the middle of your fear, you still have the sense of like, let's take a selfie. But when you were flying back, remember, you've committed now. You are all in. the wreath was, what do they call it? You know, the tree of liberty will be watered by the blood of the martyrs. You have decided, I am on this side of history, and I'm, what do they call it? And I'm willing to be sacrificed for it. Is there a point at which you got a sense that friends might not be that many? Or it was just the militant, as you say, the militant Mosilo that says it's either tampons or a wreath?
I naively thought that just like all the other people that gave her information, the report will be back within 3 months. I'll get a job. There'll be arrests and life will continue. But my state of mind, I never flew Egypt Air. They don't sell alcohol.
Yes.
And they had many crashes.
Yes. But
it was so important for me to not fly Emirates and spend 4 hours in Dubai.
Yes.
So it was the first time I flew Egypt Air.
Direct.
Yeah, and I cried the entire time, the 9 hours flight. And I kept saying, Mosilo, where are you going? You're going to the Public Protector. What are you going to say? You're going to tell about corruption. What point in your life have you come to this? You know, when I'm a sword. What pinpoint that point that you could have just gone left? Now look what you've done.
Yes.
I arrive. We set up a meeting, and I'm there for a week. I haven't told anybody. I haven't consulted with anybody except with my partner. And I told him I'm doing it. And he just gave me their numbers and organized a meeting. So when I got back and I saw my friends, I just said, no, I'm just here for a couple of meetings and then I'll go back. So I was very naive as to how fickle people are. And I was very naive as to where my future will lie. The furthest thing from my naivety thinking, the bad guys are going to be in jail, and I'm going to, corporate saying our ethos is integrity, and you within a couple of months, I would go back to my normal life.
And you know what intrigues me about the whole issue is that as you were reading through the Companies Act, there's the issue of professionalism, there's confidentiality, there's the professionalism that goes with all of that. And now, a lot of people tend to grapple with that. I've signed a confidentiality clause and this and that and everything else. But there is a point at which even that confidentiality clause is not going to protect you should you not say anything.
Yes, well, and a confidentiality clause is null and void if you're hiding corruption and something illegal. It's null and void. So even though I had a confidentiality clause in my contract, there are certain people in the PDA that you can go to. I didn't go to the media. I went to the Public Protector. Yes. So I followed the law to the letter. But unfortunately,
the reckoning comes.
The reckoning comes. South Africa was upside down. Yes. The law was those who stood up against impunity were persecuted and prosecuted, and those who enabled it, the enablers, the architects, they got promoted so karma was upside down for that period. And it was so destroying for me because it went against everything I've ever believed in. And I couldn't believe that this is my beloved country.
May we never live there again. May we as a nation never ever find ourselves in a place like that. Now the process starts. Now, obviously, general corporates, they will vilify you and, the company itself being what it was. Its first stance is just going after, you head on and taking you through court cases and claiming perjury and all sorts of other things. And corruption and theft.
Cybercrime, that was my favorite one.
Is it?
Yes, cybercrime. I'm like, oh, this is so...
He's saying this is juicy.
Yeah, this is nice. Eh? I mean,
I am a, what do they call it? I'm a true militant now.
I can just imagine myself there. No, all I did was just forward some files to my Gmail account so that I can substantiate my claims to Madonsela.
You know, I mean, it's like people start going after you, and I think it's the truth of it. I mean, we must tell the story in full, in the sense that, you know, there are these things that one will face.
Yes, there were a lot of there was a lot. So when I went to Thuli Madonsela, I asked her to be anonymous.
Yes.
And that's what we did. I was not mentioned in the state of capture report. She just said, in phase 2, because she wanted an inquiry, investigate regiments in Trillian based on Amabugani and Sunday Times. So my fingerprints were
not
off on the crime scene. And then I go to Pravin as well, and I meet his advisor, and I tell him I suspect that these fraud charges are linked to the fact that Trillian was already whispering that the president wants to fire you in its corridors 6 months earlier. Now, the first betrayal was when Thuli left office and the report was interdicted. I had taken Trillian to the CCMA. So I had for constructive dismissal.
Yes.
Yeah, I can't stay. It's unbearable. It's intolerable. It's illegal. So, so I had a Worksmans as my labor lawyers. Yes. So, and then I had, so my complaint was labor law and state capture. Thuli was just state capture. So that weekend, Worksmans decides this woman's affidavit is too explosive. That interdict could be with us for the next 20 years. We're going to give it to the Sunday Times.
They blow it open.
And they blow it open. Front page. At my niece's second birthday party.
Yes.
And you know they like to call you in the evening. And I said, you publish that. And you put a gun to my head. And what's even worse, they call Eric and Salim Issa to get, this is the allegations. She's a liar. She's a fraudster. She's a thief.
And the cybercrime.
And we are soon going to charge her criminally.
Yes.
That's the first time now I had to call my brother and sister to say, oh, by the way, this is what I've done. And why did you go?
Yes.
Look at your life now. You know, your life is at risk. And I said, but my mother didn't, we have the same mom. I don't understand why this is why I didn't consult, because you would have tried to convince me. Yes, so 3 weeks later, I get a call from the Economic Crime Unit that I must come in for a warning statement because Trillian has criminally charged me.
Must you explain a warning statement? You know, it's one of those things that I was baffled by, that you had to fill in a warning statement.
I knew it from Pravin because the Hawks also asked him to go fill in.
Oh, to go in. Okay, yes. So by that time you knew what a warning statement is.
No, I had heard about it.
Okay.
Now it was my turn to...
I haven't lived. I haven't had to make a warning statement.
My goodness. I mean, I've gotten a traffic fight. Now I have to go make warning statements. And I said, when did they charge me? 2 weeks ago. And I said, it's already ready for warning statements. Yeah, I have to... So it's like, it's a plea.
Yes.
It's like a plea. Why
should we not charge you?
Exactly, yeah. Yes. At that time, I didn't have a lawyer. So this constable calls me and says, because of who these people are politically and their connections and the political environment, I have been pressured to to expedite this case. And I have to take it to the NPA, with or without your warning statement.
Yes.
And I said, I'm not coming. I'll find a legal team to come. And he says, don't worry, Ms. Mothepu, you're going to enjoy working with me. 29th of December, 7:30, he sends me an SMS. I'm going to have to take it up to the NPA because you're not coming with your lawyers.
Yes.
Imagine if the NPA and the host could be so efficient with every with every case that 2 weeks is ready to go to the NPA.
But they were dealing with a militant young lady.
Yes,
so,
yeah.
She was a threat to national security.
So Werksmans called me.
Yeah.
So I'm in a room with Ivan Pillay.
Yeah.
And Yoli Piki,
Yeah.
and my lawyer, and Daniel Witz. They say, okay, we have a fund, because they were the rogue unit.
Yes.
So they had some funds that was managed by the Legal Resource Center.
Yes.
They all had their own litigation. So they said, we can assist you. And here's a lawyer. And he's a criminal lawyer. And we negotiated his rate. But, I mean, I think his rate was something like, let's say 5,000 an hour, and I was getting something like 1,250.
Yes.
So the rest I had to pay.
Yes.
January, I'm unemployed. My bill is 1,300,000 rand.
Yes. But remember, it had been 1.8 before we got there, because the original bid.
No, it was 1.3.
Okay.
And then I went to the Freedom Under Laws, the other legal firms to assist me with going forward. I was willing to sell my house. And at that time, I'd lost faith in humanity. And I had exited my WhatsApp group with God. I looked up to the sky and said, I'm exiting this group. I have to sell my house. I'm about to file for bankruptcy. I can't get a job. I've got these criminal charges laying over me. I feel like Job.
Yeah.
But I will never curse you and die. But I said, you have forsaken me and you're a liar. So there was a Mail and Guardian article, because Trillian was suing me for everything under the sky, throwing law firms called Stalingrad just to bankrupt me, and to deter anybody who thinks they'll follow after me.
Who can do the same thing.
And so she wrote an article, How to Bleed a Whistleblower Dry, because when you put your legal arguments at the registrar, it becomes public. So she said, oh my God, there's civil, there's criminal. These guys are milking you.
Yeah.
And interestingly, she got that phrase from Trillian's lawyers at the CCMA. So the media was there.
Yeah.
And when they left, and the Trillian's lawyer, she says, don't worry, we're going to bleed her dry. So that's how she got that. But Plough came to the rescue.
Yes.
They are a French-based organization. They protect whistleblowers globally. They Snowden, Assange, and they just opened a African office.
Yes.
So they make contact with Jessica Beholdenhold.
Okay.
And we meet at my lawyer's office. And so they tell them who they are. I tell them what I've done and my situation. I can't afford even 1 cent of this 1,300,000 rand. I haven't worked, and I've even stopped looking for employment. So they say, no, give me the number of the chairman of Werksmans and the partner. 2 days later, they say, we've negotiated it to 700,000 rand, and here's a proof of payment. And I fired Werksmans. My faith in humanity had been restored again, and
You go back to the WhatsApp group.
And then I go back to me and God's WhatsApp group.
You go back to the WhatsApp group.
Yeah, with my tail between my legs.
You go back to the WhatsApp
Yes.
group. There's a God out there.
Yes, I go back.
Yeah, there's a God out there. You know, me and you can talk until the cows come home. I want to come to the, what do they call it, to the bit where there's, you know, Bianca at some point in time didn't want to come on board, but later on she does come on board,
Yes.
and you guys drink a lot of wine together.
Yes.
And you know, there's the bits where, what do they call it? So I want to go back to the bits where, you know, initially you're looking for a job now. There's one thing that your legal fees have been paid off by PLAF. I tried to read the name, Platform, the Protection, this, whatever, and
Yes.
but the important bit of it that we're starting to talk about, life does improve.
Absolutely.
Life does get better.
Yes.
There is a what do they call it? There's a trough
light.
you go through, but there's
Yes.
a light at the end of the tunnel. You know, at some point in time, you appeal to the banks, and some of your loans get done away with as an individual. And you also get a call from the president.
Yeah, so I don't want to deter, but I want people to read the book. But after CR 17-1 in December,
Yes.
I was no longer a suspect. So 2 weeks later, the NPA says, can you please come and assist us find the money trail?
Okay.
And I said, but I'm a suspect.
Yes.
No, that was a different team. So do you see how state capture is not just looting of our economy? You use institutions to weaponize against those.
Yes.
So I have to, forgiveness is a journey. I forgive them and I help them.
And they still right up until today have not removed the other one.
No, I'm still a suspect legally because they haven't given me I've received more kindness from strangers.
Yes.
I've lost friends. I've lost family members. My mental health is, I mean, I still have a psychiatrist and a trauma counselor, and I still have insomnia. But the media played such an important role that they put my story out there.
Yes.
When Sigonathi Manjanja wrote an article about how I took a bullet for South Africa,
Yes.
and I'm about to sell my house, and Rob Shooter, the CEO of MTN, he did not say hashtag Hi Mosilo.
Yes.
He called a board member, and he gave me a job in Treasury.
Yes.
3 million. The president was earning 2.8. My bank, they
Yes.
tried to find me a job. Nobody wanted me. They said, how can we help you? They gave me my title deed.
Yes.
I'm a pensioner right now. I use that money at MTN to pay off my investment. When the interest rates go up, I celebrate. I've had a book that I use my royalties to assist others.
Yes.
I walk with the president. And I'm employed. Interestingly enough, I'm the special advisor of Senzo Mkhunu.
Okay.
And I have been not just restored, but elevated. And I have to say, it has been a painful journey. And there were days I wanted to give up. But I wrote this book because I wanted to show people that in this day and age, there are people with a moral campus. There are people who, even though they like the finer things in life, every generation goes through a crisis. We had our liberators. They left that comfort, tortured, exiled, murdered. We enjoy the fruits of that blood and sacrifices. We have democracy. Less than 30 years later, those same people are now looting. So it needed a different kind of
hero.
Of militancy.
Of heroine, yes.
Yes,
Okay.
Now you fight in the boardrooms.
Yes.
And you fight with information. And for me, I feel that everybody can do their part. We all have to be revolutionaries. Every revolution is painful. It requires blood and sacrifice.
Yes.
And I will forever never regret doing what I did. And for me, writing this book was just to show people the faithfulness of good triumphing over evil, but also the strength of the human spirit.
Mosilo, what do they call it? This is so riveting that I'm not even getting questions online yet. But let's continue. You know, I love the quote when you say, if Mosilo had to do this again,
she would do it again.
She would do it again. And that to me is one of those, the level of conviction. And as I said to you, we gotta get to a point of discussing how do we bottle this thing and have it sold across.
I'll be a multi-billionaire.
And have it sold and all of that. But the road to recovery also has its treacherous parts.
Yes.
You know, your mental health.
Yes.
And, you know,
drinking a little bit too much wine.
Yes.
Yes.
Not that I don't mind, but it's that I will live with. But the challenge with now being able to just hold one together and, you know, struggle through that. And, you know, you spoke about when you worked for MTN. Every day you took a different way of going to work. The one day with the Audi, the other day with Vusi's Range Rover, and then on the one day then Uber and all of that.
A routine.
And you never had a routine. Life does change when you become a whistleblower.
Yes. And
it changes in a very drastic manner.
Yes. And I was on sick leave for 4 months out of 6 months at MTN.
Of the contract.
Yeah, and they had to, because I felt like a soldier from war.
Yes.
And you have to now go back into society, civil society.
Be reintegrated.
Those 2 years, I met the FBI. I was harassed by the Hawks. I almost went bankrupt. I had to meet with the FBI. I went to the inquiry at ESCOM in Parliament. I went to Badlander's inquiry.
Yes.
My days were inquiries and affidavits for 2 years and all of that. So for me to go to MTN and people talk about baby showers.
Yes.
And there's a deal at Take a Lot and
Black Friday and stuff like that.
Yeah, and I'm like, my God, how was your weekend? I'm like, well, I just have to prepare for Zondo. So I didn't tell them anything about me.
Yes.
And what I liked about my team, everybody goes to work, they put their earphones on and they just type.
Yeah.
So it was only after. So it was just too much for me I had post-traumatic stress disorder. Yes. And my body shut down completely. So I had I was in hospital. It was just bad. But I always say MTN were angels of mercy. They just cleaned out that 4 months of sick leave to zero.
And
then I recuperated. But one thing I did for myself was to stop. I said, I cannot assist anybody. I remember SAICA wanted me to assist them. Yes. With Anuja's inquiry. I said, there's a judgment that I had to write an affidavit when ESCOM illegally paid Trillian million, and I had to co-sign a confirmatory affidavit with Pakamane Khadeb, the former CEO. And I said, you have a judgment that says illegal payments, corrupt relationship. Why do you need me to testify? So I took away, I used to know news, yoga, gospel music, started gaining some weight, going to, just becoming I used to say the world of the mere mortals.
Yes.
Yeah, so I became a mere mortal.
Yes.
Yes.
And that is interesting that we talk about that you in a journey like this, you have to take care of yourself. Because that's one of the things that happened in the initial phase of it.
Yes.
When you were looking for a job and all of that, I mean, you were in bed most of the time.
For 2 years I was in bed.
You would wake up to a bottle of wine and then go to bed with a bottle of wine and all of that. But you have to tell me how you afforded all of that wine. So that for 2 years, that much wine for 2 years could bankrupt somebody easily.
Do you know what I did?
Yeah.
Remember I told you I had some...
You paid off your house, yeah?
No, I remember I had all those bonuses.
Yes.
And then I also asked my bank, can you please start it from zero? That bond that I'm just about to pay off,
yes.
I want access to it. When I went online, I saw it, and then I resigned.
Okay.
I think I could have lived with 3 years on it, but all that wine.
All that wine, eh? All that wine. The only thing is you didn't invite me, but there was a time when you had to take your fight to Parliament and go and have the conversations there.
Yes, I was subpoenaed by the ESCOM inquiry.
Okay.
Yes, remember there was that whole business about Brian Molefe resigning, coming back, being a colonel, going back. Then Lynn Brown asked for an inquiry. So I was summoned, but I did ask for in camera, which means you can hear my voice, but you can't see my face. And that was the first time my mother knew. I tasked my brother because we had a relationship with the media. Call me the Nenegate whistleblower.
Yes. Call
me the Trillian whistleblower. But if companies are Googling me, please, plus my own safety. But in Parliament, it was going to be televised. And so my mom didn't know. She didn't know I was unemployed. I was still giving her allowance. My brother tasked her with, she's going to appear in Parliament, so you can just imagine her shock. And she's like, but why did she do that? Why did she even have to go forward? Why didn't she just leave and walk away? And my brother says, because you don't raise her like that.
Because you...
That's when she broke down. That time, cried all that way to Cape Town. I had 4 bodyguards, 2 in front of me, 2 at the back. Parliament. I've never entered Parliament in the
basement.
No, I had to go in the basement, so I've never entered in the front. And I was shaking, when you're like this, the whole time. And I was disappointed with that report because they just said, they gave it to Zondo.
Just like that?
Yeah, they gave it to Zondo. I had to testify twice. Yes. I initially told them that I'm not well. Yes. They have all my documents, and I was summoned. And I could not be a constitutional delinquent, so I went with my lawyer. And I have to say, several of the recommendations that I asked for more protection, reward, changing the legislation, have made it into his report and the president's implementation plan. But we are still unprotected, we are still unrewarded, we are still, some of us are still unemployed, still going through disciplinary matters that this legislation is supposed to protect you, but if your bosses are bullies, the onus is on you to say that you're a whistleblower. But I said that the fruits of my labor are slowly coming. I mean, my first affidavit, a criminal one, was on the club loan, where I worked at Regiments. But Trillian invoiced that 93.4 million rand to Transnet. And it was paid in 4 days.
4 days.
Many entrepreneurs have working capital problems because government doesn't pay within the prescribed 30 days. 75 of that money went towards Tegeta to buy Optimum. So I have, they've all been arrested.
When you started off all of this, was there a sense that you were saving a country? Or was just simply, Mosilo, you need to speak up. You know things, you just have to. Because in earnest, I mean, we owe a great debt to you for just speaking up at that point in time. Because probably a lot of things were not connecting without not an insider, but somebody from inside all of that. Because a lot of this would have just been shredded and it would have disappeared just like that. Did you have a sense that you were about to save a country?
When I read Thuli Madonsela's terms of reference, and I saw the chaos that was happening, in my book I say South Africa is burning, and I could assist her. So I felt a sense of obligation, but I felt that this report is going to clean up this mess. And somewhere in my corner, I will save my bit of the country. I can't say the whole country.
But to that end, it was the whole country. I mean, and that's an important conversation because people tend to not understand that when you do your bit, the bit that, you have control over, you actually, it's that domino effect. You actually influence, or you could refer to it as the butterfly effect, where the butterfly flaps its wing in one part of the globe and causes a storm in another part of the globe. But the butterfly effect is there. And one should actually be able to say, well, as we celebrate the ethics and issues about fraud prevention and everything else, it is important that people see the fact that with a small act, well, a lot of crying on planes and drinking wine, but with a small act of crying
and many affidavits
later.
Yeah.
And you might end up not having that much good health, but it's a small, what do they call it, price to pay for saving a country. One has to be able to understand that you're contributing to the greater nation.
You're right, because I've had people through my lawyer who said, you know what, I have a client. Of course, confidentiality. She was motivated by what Ms. Mothepu did. And she decided to come to me to write her affidavit because she thought, wow, a woman of courage, if she can do it. And look how small she is. And she has the bravery and the guts. I too can do it. So I've had a lot of feedback from people who've gone to their lawyers and say, I have information too, or the Zondo Commission and say, we saw her bravery, and we too can. We believe that we can also contribute.
Somebody has just said it now. I too believe that in the future I'll be able to do the same way I find corruption and all of that. I have hundreds more questions, but our time is running out and running out at a, what do they call it, at a galloping speed. And normally around this time, I would do the normal things but I have one last question. From now recovering, yes, you still don't have the full normal life that you would have. But from us, as a nation, we're eternally grateful. But has Mosilo come to terms with herself, with her bravery, with her heroism, and now got into a point where she's enjoying the space that she's in?
Yes, absolutely. I wake up, I do my yoga, I go to work, I have a new partner. He's very supportive. I am I will never have a normal life.
Never is a very long time.
What I have done and what I've gone through has shifted me spiritually, emotionally, psychologically. When I go to sleep, I need a pill. If I forget to take if I forget to refill a prescription, I'll stay up for 24 hours. I have a psychiatrist, trauma counselor.
Yeah.
I have a pharmacy, but we're slowly getting there. I have a priest. I have a partner who supports me. I will have to be subpoenaed to be a state witness. These things take, 15 years?
Yeah.
And that's just one affidavit. I still have to go to ESCOM on the 700 million matter. So the real work starts now.
Normally at this point in time, I sit and I thank the publishers, I thank everybody else who needs to be thanked, and I thank those who make time to make sure that I can do what I do, and I enjoy so much in doing this. But today I'm not going to do that. I will remind you, in the Red Song, Nhlanhla sings, and he says, "Need I remind you that the armed struggle was an act of love?" What Mosilo has done for this country was an act of love. And for that matter, I will thank her. Thank you, my dear, and thank you for everything you've done for us.
Thank you so much. You know, when I first joined Twitter, and it was because of this book, I said, South Africa, I've written a love letter to you. So this Uncaptured is my love letter to South Africa.
From me, it's been good. I thank you.